I can't help myself, okay? And super weird, but I'm really liking it. Hey y'all, it's Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we are going to be doing a BookTuber Recommends, where I'm going to have 3 BookTube friends pick books for me. All right, before I get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, what is the last book that you read that a friend recommended to you? All right, so we're officially bringing back my BookTube Recommends. I did one of these and I planned out a second and that second never happened. So I'm finally getting back around to it. Shout out to 𝗖cie RH who kind of spearheaded this collaboration. So I'm obviously going to be reading a book that Ashley recommended to me, as well as 𝗖cie from 𝗖vie, Wendy Martinez, and then Stef from Coffee Over Apples. I will have links to all of those wonderful ladies in the description down below. Make sure to go check out their channels because they will also be posting a video today where they are reading books that include recommendations I gave them. I'm actually really nervous for that because I recommended them some of my favorite books. I really hope they like them. So starting at the top and here to introduce her book is Stef from Coffee Over Apples.
Hey Nat, it's Stef. I'm here to recommend you a book for this vlog. I'm going to recommend you one of my favorite horror novellas of all time. This is Walking Practice by Dolki, and I would also highly suggest that you listen to the audiobook if you can, because I am a big fan of the production of this. It follows an alien named Mumu who landed on Earth years ago and is stuck here. They've come to find that their only thing that they enjoy consuming is human flesh, and in order to hunt, they use dating apps. It talks about queerness, queer identity, the way that we change our bodies to fit in, and also disability. I hope you love it as much as I did.
Hey friends, on lunch today, I started into an ebook of Walking Practice by Dolki. It is already super weird, but I'm really liking it. So we're following this alien who is on Earth disguising themselves as a human, which is pretty painful for them to do almost. They like describe it in a way where it's almost like they're tensing a muscle the entire time. They're like maintaining this human facade. And so it's exhausting for them to maintain doing this so that they can seduce other humans, boink their brains out, and then eat them. It's weird, but like I am into it. It's such an interesting writing style. It is very stream of consciousness of like how it flows. One thing I will say that I'm already really liking with it is the alien character. It very much feels, even though they are an alien, it feels like the story itself is just expanding upon the everyday difficultness of being a human and just like interacting in the world. It can be kind of exhausting, but also with this character, there's already been some like interesting ways that the authors played around with gender and like gender presentation. So that was really interesting. I'm excited to see what more they do there because I've already really enjoyed some of the lines that are working with it, but also the way the alien is living their life in the world feels very reminiscent of anxiety. Some of the lines here or there feel like being in an anxiety spiral and just kind of trying to continue again living like a normal everyday life in this weird and wacky world when there's so many things around you that just like put you on edge or make you uncomfortable, but you don't really have a choice. You still have to continue living your life. So it's weird, but I'm really liking it so far. I have no idea where the plot's like actually going. I don't know anything apart from like following the alien. That's really all I knew, but I'm digging it and I'm excited to continue reading it. Hello, my loves. So I officially finished Walking Practice by Dolki, and I really liked this. I totally understand why Steph loved this so much because I know she loves weird horror. I feel like this balanced between being like a really sexual and gross horror story while at the same time kind of having a really poignant discussion around the way queer people and people who exist outside the gender binary feel separated from the world, how that affects their everyday life. I think Dolki did a phenomenal job in how they showcased that through this alien's character, impacts that has on a person's sense of belonging, the loneliness that can come from not having a sense of community. Again, I think the author did a phenomenal job. I really liked the way their writing worked with this story, where it's kind of like a mix between almost poetic and pretty at times, but then also grotesque and crass and inappropriate. But the juxtaposition of it worked very well, especially with like what the story was doing. I also think the styling of the book was really impressive. I've always heard a lot of positive things about the audiobook of this one, but unfortunately I just wasn't having any luck getting it. So I ended up reading it on ebook alone. Simultaneously, I do wish I could have experienced the audiobook, but I loved some of the little extra things that came in the ebook. The art pieces of what is supposed to be, I imagine, the alien in different formations as they transition throughout the story. The way the type setup was done whenever the alien is not in this like human disguise, how it would like drag out certain words and it would like space them out in a way where it feels like slowing down. I'm very curious if like that is what was happening in the audiobook perhaps, but also how the story was done when it came to like dialogue. The way the dialogue is written out in the book still feels like you're at a distance. Showcases there is not a connection between the characters who are talking. This was a book where I finished it and I was like, wow, I can't wait to reread this. I did have a good few annotations in it and I was so impressed at the way the story unfolded in this like funky formatting. I'm honestly not usually somebody who pays a ton of attention to like acknowledgements or author's notes, barring like specific situations like Nat Cassidy's Mary or anything by Stephen Graham Jones. Of course, I have to read them there. But in this one, I read the translator note, but kind of expanded my perspective of why they did what they did and like how they used certain terms, how they were trying to like maintain the voice of the author. Really impressed. Mad props to them. I think it was fascinating to take a character who is simultaneously like looking for love and understanding and connection, and then having the only people who provide that to them also be the victims. I think that was such an interesting concept. Sort of made me think of A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers, but like not, it's not a one-to-one, but like definitely there were connections there that I couldn't help but notice. Across the board though, I really, really liked this. 5 stars. Absolutely 5 stars. Really want to find more from this author. I dug this so much.
Hi Nat, thanks so much for being part of this collab. The book I am choosing off of your TBR is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This book is insane. I don't even know how to describe it, but you will know soon enough. You will read it. It's not super long, which is great, and I heard that you like an ambiguous ending, so this is perfect for you. Your brain will be like going wild this whole time you're reading this, like trying to figure things out along with the characters, and it's such a good story about survival and female friendships and kind of sometimes accepting that you're never gonna know the whole story in life. So I hope you really enjoy it.
Hello again. I also have started into I Who Have Never Known Men. I'm like 40-ish% into this. I'm already having very conflicting feelings about it, which is so funny. Like I really should have known I was going to, because it's still a dystopian book. And I feel like inherently I end up having conflicting feelings about them, probably because I hated them for a very long time and I only just started to sort of like them again, but it's really only ones where I feel like they have a new discussion or like a new perspective. First off, we are seeing the story completely through the eyes of the youngest woman in this group of 40. She doesn't give us a name, but also nobody else ever calls her a name, at least so far. They only ever refer to her as the child, which is weird to me. Honestly, one of the big things I think I would personally really like to see more of in this book is the dynamics that have developed among these 40 women. 40 is a large number, so obviously it's not as though we can explore that with everybody. And we see a little bit of it when it comes to the child with the oldest woman, and then the child and the woman she deems to be the smartest of the group. With 40 being such a high number, there's a lot of stuff I can't help but wonder, not a single one of these women ever thought this, ever did this, ever tried this. I'm just having a hard time with that. Reasoning that is often used to kind of explain away those sorts of questions is that a lot of these women aren't very smart. A lot of them were homemakers or family women. If they did have jobs, they were like really low level. They were waitresses, they were typists, they were shop girls. Already not a fan of that because your job role does not equate to your intelligence level. So right there, like that's not a valid excuse to me. I also don't think your bravery tied up with like what sort of job role you have, especially given the fact that this is a group of 40 women. I can't comprehend that not a single one of them has taken on a sort of maternal role with the child, and by extension, like given her a name. Not one of them, even though it's said that some of them did have children. And again, there's like something that's slid in there to kind of excuse that away or explain it away. But even still, I'm like, what is the dynamic that the child has with these other women has maintained this distance for the decade they've been underground. And it's explained that the women were never allowed to touch. And from a psychological standpoint, I think that's very interesting because they can't form any sort of intimacy through physical touch. But at the same time, like, they are living in such close quarters. They're all reliant on one another in some way, shape, or form. Like, they still have the ability to communicate. And kind of going off of that, one of the big things that the child explains to us early on is she's like fascinated by the idea of love and connection, because the other women talk about their lives prior to being in the bunker and mention these things, but none of them will explain this stuff to her because, quote, you're never going to experience it, so why does it matter? Why do you need to know? But there's also so many references or things that are mentioned that the child will say where I'm like, okay, she doesn't understand love because nobody's explained that to her, but like she understands this or she gets that. How does that work? How does she know some of this stuff to include it in her stories or in her thoughts or like whatever? It's said that when she was younger, some of the women did try teaching her things, but eventually like she started rebelling against it. And so they just stopped pushing because it's not as though they had any way to punish her, to force her to do it, which is another thing that I did think was interesting, kind of going off that, is because they don't have any of those things. Whenever she does have a moment of like real strong independence, she doesn't have to bow to them for anything if she doesn't want to, because they hold nothing over her. The oldest woman of the group like really cannot comprehend this because she was always raised, you respect your elders, you do what they tell you. And this child has never lived that life. She has never lived in that society. So she does not have to do that, which is probably the one angle of the story that I think is most fascinating so far. But again, like there's just so many things that I have questions about, and I just know I'm not going to get answers. I also don't love the whole love and connection angle. Seem to be so hinged upon romantic hetero relationships. One thing that's mentioned is she does not menstruate. And so she feels like it's just something else to kind of keep her separated from the other women, which I did think was an interesting element there. But then whenever they talk about it, it's kind of done in this way where, again, they feel like they don't need to explain it to her because she doesn't do it. It's so important and it matters so much because you can have children off of it. And then therefore, like, that is what makes you a woman. And that gives you purpose in your life, is your reason for surviving. And like, you will never do that. So like, you don't need to understand it. And I did not like the way that was talked about. I do not like how it feels like that is being explained as, you know, what would be making her a woman, would be her role as a woman. Yeah, that was a big one that really like made the book feel its age in my mind. I've hit the point now, they're out of the bunker, and I still have so many questions. Not just about like the plot hole situation, but just like, where's this book going? At the very least, I'm really intrigued. I am sucked in. I'm really curious and gonna keep going. I have a feeling as of right now that like, even if this book ends in a way that I find to be satisfying, there's still gonna be a lot of unanswered questions that are gonna bug me. Hey y'all, so I have finished out I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, and I have such conflicting feelings about this book. So from a dystopian novel standpoint, I did think this was very interesting. And I think it's really nihilistic and has some very interesting discussions around the philosophical questions about what makes life worth living. That does make for a very bleak novel. The story itself always has this like anxiety-inducing feeling. At the same time, you have all of these questions. So few of them get answered. So few of them. Like I said in my first update, I had all of these outstanding questions, and actually some of them did get answered, because we do understand that like the main character is sort of telling the story after the fact. But at the same time, I did still have some qualms when it came to like, she would mention certain things, and I'm just like, when the hell did that possibly come up as a piece of conversation that like the women told her about this? But in all honesty, like by the time I hit the end of the book, those sorts of issues were small potatoes. I do like, again, the philosophical question of what makes life worth living, specific focus around belonging and community, isolation, and relationships. I really liked how the author got to the final point with that, but I don't like how much of an emphasis there seemed to be on romantic relationships, and specifically heterosexual romantic relationships, where it felt as though the author was kind of insinuating that life is not quite worth living if you can't fall in love, if you can't have children. And I just don't personally subscribe to that. And I really don't like that, given that I've heard this is supposed to be a feminist story where we're following the child character who has never lived in a society that has patriarchy. And so we see the impact and the changes to how she lives her life because of that. Going off of that, one angle that I thought was sort of presented, but was not really dived into deep enough for my liking, was the idea around sexuality. So even though this young woman has never had the opportunity to have any sort of exploration of her sexuality with a man, she still only ever expresses sexual interest in the men that she has been able to observe. She never showcases any interest to any of the other women in the group, even though it is explained to us that some of the women do pair off and do become couples. Could have been a jumping off point to sort of talk about and explore her sexuality when it comes to the fact that like she is only interested in men, even though she has never actually known one. But when it comes to those women characters, it's kind of written off in a way where it's like, oh, well, they only do that because they have needs and they need to take care of each other. Never really explores the fact that perhaps these women actually do have an attraction to one another. Sorry, my microphone died, so I had to swap it out. But yeah, I just felt like so many different angles around that conversation could have been explored and they weren't, which was disappointing to me. I did still have some questions when it came to a few of the plot holes around just like how some of the stuff certainly worked in this world. So it's mentioned that these women are all from like different walks of life. They're all from completely different places in the world. It was ensured that none of them possibly knew each other, yet it's never really explained to us if there's any difference in race between any of them, if any of them speak different languages, if any of them practiced different cultures, like cooked different types of food once they were out of the bunker and had more access to more ingredients. There's a slight mention of religion, but it is only ever Christianity. Again, like I have so many questions of like, why would you take the time to mention to us that these women came from all different walks of life all over the world, but then not take any time to explore the nuances of them coming from different parts of the world and then like living together and the differences that can come about between them. And maybe that does come down to the fact that not a single character apart from the child and like, I guess the one woman who she takes on as like sort of a mentor really are distinguishable in any way, shape or form. None of them have any personality. Occasionally, some of them have some dialogue, but like that's really it. There's that. I don't know. It felt like a waste. It's super conflicting feelings about this book. I'm really unsure of how I want to rate this. I think I'm just gonna go with a 3-star right down the middle because like I said, there were some elements and some angles I did think were very interesting. I really liked it. Or maybe not I necessarily liked it, but it was very thought-provoking. But on the opposite side, there are so many unanswered questions. There are so many angles of the story that I think were wasted. Like, why bring them up if you weren't going to dive deeper? So yeah, I think we're just gonna go right down the middle with a solid 3-star. I think this is a great book to read with like a group of people.
Okay, Nat, so I have my book recommendation for you. As a fellow horror lover, I am going to be a little bit biased and I'm going to recommend my favorite horror book of all time. Well, up until recently, because now that I've read his newest release, it's the new one. But before, my favorite book was We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. This book is a mind F of a book, okay? I know that it is very controversial, but I feel like if you go into it knowing that the ending is very ambiguous and you don't mind leaving a book with a little bit more questions than you had answered, knowing that ahead of time, I think that you'll be fine. But in this book, we are following a queer sapphic couple, which is perfect because it's also Pride Month. But we're following a sapphic couple, and one of the women who has a hard time saying no, she is a people pleaser. She is at home while her girlfriend is at work. And so this family ends up coming to the front door and they knock on her door and they're like, hey, the dad's like, hey, I used to live here when I was little. Do you mind if I show my family the house? And because our girl is a people pleaser, she's like, yeah, sure, fine. Like 15 minutes tops because my girlfriend's gonna be here soon. And so the family goes in
and they never come out. This book is so fast-paced, a roller coaster of emotions. Literally feels like you are sucked into the middle of a blockbuster horror film. So I hope you enjoy this book as much as I did. If not, it's okay. Feel free to tell me your thoughts because reading is subjective, but I do hope you love it.
Hello, my friends. So I have hit the halfway point into We Used to Live Here. Starting from the top, we first have to talk about my feelings for the main character, Eve. Eve is a chronic people pleaser. She has some serious anxiety, not just social anxiety, though that definitely plays into it. And I think the author is doing a fantastic job of showcasing that anxiety in Eve's character and the voice for her. She actually talks about the personification she has made her anxiety, and his name is Mo. He is this terrifying stuffed monkey from her childhood, which is, I can't even begin to imagine like why she would have chosen that of all things, because the whole point of personifying your anxiety is to, like, you know, take away some of the fear, but that makes it so much scarier in my head. Which was probably the point from the author, but like, you get what I'm saying. I think Eve's character has been very convincing so far. However, it is really rough being in her head, because sometimes it genuinely feels like I am just hanging out in my own head on a really bad anxiety day. And that is not a fun feeling. However, I do like that the chapters are alternating with random pieces of media that are kind of maybe giving clues around stuff, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't, there's like a bunch of strings hanging out, but I haven't really tied too many of them together yet. I think with the kind of character Eve is, it is very easy to get frustrated with her. I also think with that, it's very easy to see how she is constantly writing off these things, utilizing the logic of Occam's razor and not questioning any deeper, because she thinks the more drastic or extreme possibilities is just her anxiety going into overdrive. And Eva's like, yes, but sometimes not. We have seen a little bit of her partner Charlie, who seems to be a lot more grounded. She's like the one who doesn't believe in anything paranormal. She's a realist. She's got a strong backbone. Like, she's not willing to take any crap. We see that the family who have come into the house, at the very least the mother, is religious, and that has caused some tension, which honestly I was loving. It was really delicious. Kind of wanted that to continue playing out. And so I think Charlie is a really good juxtaposition for Eve, and also kind of reinforces that questioning that Eve always has of like, oh, maybe this isn't really that, because Charlie wouldn't see it that way. So I'm probably just letting my anxiety get the better of me again. And even that was also very clever, the dynamic between the two of them that's added to that questioning. But at the same time, I can't help but think this is your partner. Like, you should feel comfortable with letting these questions fly. You should feel comfortable enough with them to let out some of this ridiculousness. And yeah, especially with the kind of person Charlie is, it seems like she would help to bring her back down. But at the very least, like, if she's a good partner, she should listen to you. Even that's one thing of this is like, I don't know how I feel about the relationship. Obviously, this isn't a romance book, but I read a lot of romance. I can't help myself, okay? When it comes to the family, I will say pretty quickly, I appreciated how things almost immediately just had this film over everything that's like, something is not quite right, but I don't know what it is. The whole situation in itself is weird, but like, once they're in the house, it just keeps having thing after thing after thing that can be explained away as simple, but is definitely not. I don't believe it for a second. Now though, around like the 40 to 50% mark, we've kind of pulled back from the house. And not to say we haven't had other unsettling or weird situations happening, but I'm not quite sure what this stuff that's being revealed really has to do with the house and like how things are going to get tied back. I'm sure it's going to. I just haven't put that together yet. I'm invested. Like, I'm so curious about what the hell is happening here and like, where is this going to go? But at the same time, this can be kind of a unsettling, not necessarily fun, anxiety inducing read. And even like, I am intrigued. I do want to know what's going on. I'm definitely going to keep reading because I need to know what is going on. Hey y'all, so I have officially finished out We Used to Live Here, and I'm like slightly more toward the minority, I think. Unfortunately, I did not really love this. I actually found out that it's not a creepypasta, technically speaking, but it was like a story posted to Reddit. And I actually think this would work a lot better for me as a short story or as a novella. By adding all of this extra stuff, the story just kind of got over bloated. There were too many different directions, which then left a lot of plot holes, a lot of loose ends, meaning that by the time I hit the end of the story, when we were actually making some like real progress, and it felt like we were finally sort of maybe getting answers, it had just taken way too long and I was getting tired of it. I didn't have the patience for it anymore. The pacing had dragged way too much. And then we like jump up at the end and it's like, okay, this is great, but like, just tell me now. I do think the reveal for the whole multimedia element was actually pretty cool. I like how that was done. I honestly have very conflicting feelings about the end, and this is so weird because it's sort of an open ending. Here, I think the fact that for so much of this book, I was lost, had no answers, was just questioning everything. And then the fact that there are so many different avenues as to what the answer could be meant that getting no real answers is just unsatisfying. Like, I don't like that. And maybe it's because for a lot of this book, I felt like there was going to be a really normal, human, grounded answer. It just was frustrating. It was no. Again, I think perhaps if the story was shorter and a lot of the stuff in the middle, these different options, these different avenues would have been cut out, maybe I would have liked this more, or at the very least, like I would have been more invested at the end to have stronger feelings about the finale and the final answer by extension. But like, yeah. So my rating for this came out to like a very low 3-star. I think the writing itself is definitely eerie and creepy. The author hit that. As far as how everything was plotted out, again, I think there's some good stuff there, but I think it just got overblown and dragged out too much in the middle. Even then, like for intrigue, I was at like a solid 9 or 10 in the beginning, but whenever we started to hit that middle lull, like it really dropped down a lot, like I was saying. And even though I was getting a little antsy there at the end, my intrigue had jumped back up. Like there's a reason I still kept reading. I didn't put this down because I was curious what the heck was going on, which again probably ties into the fact that I'm very dissatisfied with the ending. So yeah, I finally read this, and as per usual, it seems like anytime I read divisive books, I somehow still end up falling like right down the middle. All right, so I did okay with this one. At the very least, I'm really glad that I managed to get some books knocked off of my TBR. All 3 of them were books that have been on my TBR for a hot second, and I've been meaning to get to for a while, so shout out to my booktube friends for forcing me to read the books I say I'm going to. And on that note, that is officially it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for going to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below if you made it all the way to the end of this video. I guess let's do the red heart emoji down in the comments. I have links to all my socials, as well as a few ways you can support me down in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!